introducing this subject and moderating the panel. I'd just like to take a poll. How many of you know someone who has been injured or killed in a motorcoach crash? Okay, so that's a fair number in this room, and you can advance it. David mentioned that one of the goals of this conference is to form coalitions on how we can work together for motorcoach or bus safety. I hope that by the end of the talk, we will have a few ideas of how survivors and advocates and the ATO can work together. Each of us can take responsibility for the unnecessary and preventable deaths of each person shown on this slide. Every person pictured on this slide was someone's daughter, someone's son, someone's sister or brother, and in my case, someone's mother. When you get on a motor coach, it's usually for some happy occasion. I mean, we usually are going on a church trip or going to the casino or visiting family, or some of the times we're just trying to get to work. You can keep on the first slide. Okay, so in the case of the people pictured in this slide, Ashley Brown and Alicia Benora were on their way to a soccer game, and Melanie is Ashley's mother, and we'll be talking more about the Westbrook bus crash. The 5 boys on the right-hand side of the screen were on the Bluffton University baseball team, and their motor coach crashed and went over an overpass in Atlanta, Georgia, and we just celebrated the 5-year anniversary of that accident. And on the bottom corner, the 16 people pictured are from Houston, Texas, and they were on their way to Carthage, Missouri for a religious pilgrimage when the tire of the bus blew out. And the driver lost control, and the bus went off a bridge and came to rest on its right side on the embankment 8 feet below. You don't ever think that when you're off to a baseball game or a soccer game or going on a church trip that you're going to end in tragedy, but these things happen. Over the past few years, the number of motor coach crashes has increased, as Bruce had mentioned, and it's becoming a really big problem. Okay, next slide, thank you. So I wanted to take a minute to tell you about my mom, because all children love talking about their mothers, and to help put a face and a story with the numbers and the deaths and injuries that result from bus crashes. My mom was my hero. She worked for the state of Texas as a social worker for 25 years. After my dad died when I was 7, she raised my brother and me on her own. And my dad actually worked as a Greyhound bus mechanic before he died. So my ties to the bus industry are quite long. My mom found comfort in her Catholic faith and always had a smile on her face. She loved adventure, and you can see this in the pictures on this slide. So there's a picture of my mom and my brother when we went to China, and I asked them to pretend to be meditating stone statues. So that's the one on the right. My brother just got married this past November, and it makes me really sad that she wasn't there to see it. The other pictures were taken in Hawaii. After my mom retired, she'd come and spend 1 month every summer in Hawaii. Who wouldn't love that? So one year it was parasailing, and that's the top right picture. We went parasailing, and my mom didn't know how to swim, but she trusted me to save her life if things were to go awry. And the picture on the bottom left, although we lived in Texas, she lived in Texas for over 30 years. She had never ridden a horse, so we went horseback riding on the north shore of Oahu. And then the last picture on the top left is from my graduation at the University of Hawaii. It was really, we were both so happy, and that was the last picture that we took before she died 3 months later. So to talk about the accident, on August 2008, my mother, Catherine Lamb, and 54 other church members embarked on an annual religious pilgrimage to Carthage, Missouri. My mother had made this trip a lot of times, and I had made it as a kid a lot of times. And I was hoping she was going to sit this trip out because I had just moved back to Houston to be with her and hang out and take her on some more adventures. But she decided to go on the trip to keep her friend company. And she sat on the front row seat on the motor coach because she would get car sick. And she called me to let me know that she was leaving the church. And she was eating a sandwich, and she's like, "Oh, will you be sure to sweep the house and make your brother something for dinner. And I'm like, why, Mom? He's only like a year older than me. Can't he like make his own dinner? So it was just like regular talk, and we chatted for a little bit more, and I said, I love you, Mom. Be sure to call me when you get back on Sunday, because we're going to take you out for your dinner for your 63rd birthday. But the call never came. As I was driving to work early the next morning and listening to NPR, the news reported that a bus had crashed around 1 a.m. just north of Dallas in Sherman, Texas. When the reporter went on to say that 12 people had died on the scene and many others had been rushed to local hospitals, my heart sank. My mom was among the 12 people who died on the scene. The driver and the other 38 passengers sustained moderate to serious injuries. At least 4 people were ejected from the bus, and others were trapped under the bus. The passengers who lived described hearing a loud noise and waking up in a tangle of broken glass and bloodied bodies, and most of the Sherman rescue workers had never seen such a catastrophe. It's not easy for me to tell you guys this story, but I just want you to have a face and kind of a story, so you know that each of these deaths there's a family behind it. My story is just one of many stories of those who have lost ones in motorcoach crashes. It's been 3.5 years since I lost my mom, and still every time I drive next to a motorcoach, I'm reminded of my mom's death, and I forget how to breathe for a few moments. Now, I've kind of talked about my personal story, and I want to take a moment to talk about the scope of the issue of motorcoach safety. So next slide, please. So let's talk about some numbers. So first, 1968. As Bruce had already mentioned, re-regulation and deregulation and trying to get regulation again takes a long time. The NTSB first issued safety recommendations for motor coaches in 1968, and that's been 44 years, and we're still riding around in motor coaches, not all, but a majority of motor coaches that still don't have seat belts, anti-ejection window glazing, anti-crush roofing, and tire pressure monitoring systems. Everything that we take it granted in cars and planes, we don't always have in every bus that we get on. And the problem is exacerbated by all these smaller bus companies that just have 3, 4, or 5 buses. Okay, so the next number I want you guys to remember is 5-minute inspections. So I went to the NTSB hearing on my mom's crash, and it was so upsetting and unacceptable for me to hear that the bus had been inspected the day before by a place called 5-minute inspections. And when normally a thorough motor coach inspection takes 60 to 90 minutes. It was also really upsetting for me to hear that the bus driver in my mom's crash had a criminal record and had both alcohol and cocaine in his system. The driver's only inspection of the motor coach tires was to give them a kick before the start of the trip. And yeah, so that was just, I know that that's not a majority of drivers, but it was really hard to hear that this could happen. Okay. Since my mother's crash, there have been over 90 more motor coach crashes. So I just wonder how this is possible, even though the NTSB has been issuing their recommendations for over 40 years. Okay, next number, $7,000. So the National Highway and Transportation Safety Administration has demonstrated that it would take about $7,000 to equip motor coaches with seat belts. And that's just one of the provisions that I would think would help save lives. Next number. And this cost, given that the lifespan of a motor coach is about 25 to 30 years, the cost of equipping new motor coaches with occupant protection systems would be less than 10 cents per passenger. And in my community alone, the direct medical costs of those injured or killed in the Sherman bus crash exceed $3.75 million. This does not include the loss of life, future potential earnings, or continuing in future medical care. And a lot of the people in my community were just, regular, hardworking people. And so when they get injured, they don't have a lot of savings, and they can't provide for their families. Okay, So how can we work together to change these numbers? Next slide. Okay, so I want to talk about the Motorcoach Enhanced Safety Act bill. It's sponsored by Senators Sherrod Brown and Kay Bailey Hutchison, and we could really use your personal as well as ATU support, which they have given on this bill. The families recognize that there are a lot of wonderful bus drivers out there and probably in this room, and I want to take a moment to thank you for doing your best to safely transport us to work and on vacation and everywhere. However, not all bus companies have the same requirements for their drivers. So the MESA bill would mandate provisions to ensure safer drivers by issuing rules for physical fitness oversight and medical certification of motorcoach drivers, CDL testing requirement, and then also making some requirements for driver training. These provisions would have really helped in my mom's crash, as I've told you about the driver in my mom's crash. But even with the safest drivers, there are other elements beyond the safe driver's control. And for these reasons, we also believe that mandating comprehensive safety standards are just as important. So those issues that I talked about earlier, like anti-ejection glazing on windows, the lap shoulder seat belts, and all the seating positions, and not just the driver. A lot of these studies have shown that when the driver has a seatbelt on, they're less likely to be ejected and die. But some buses only have a seatbelt in the driver position. And then when a crash occurs, because sometimes even the best circumstances drivers can't correct when a crash happens, we want better passenger compartmentalization to protect in a crash and improve occupant protection systems and the tire pressure monitoring systems. In the House, you can do next. This same MESA bill is known as the H.R. 7 Lewis-Poe Amendment, and so there are some developments there, so I won't talk more about that, but that's pretty much the same companion bill as in the Senate. Okay. So the Congressional Budget Office did a assessment of how much it would cost the American taxpayer for this MESA bill, and it's estimated to cost less than $1 per American over the 2012-2016 period. So it's not a lot that we're asking for. And then so I'm hoping that we can change this into a good 5 minutes for a good number by asking each of you, local chapter presidents, and each of you to consider writing your congressman or talking to your congressman about the MESA bill to raise awareness about motor coach safety. And what we can do as the families and advocate safety organizations is, like, we'd be happy to come and talk to your members at your meetings or whatever, because everybody's super busy, so not everybody has time to go and read all the legal language of the bills, and so we would be happy to do that. And so, and the last thing that I want to say is change takes time, so it's a frustrating process. I've been at this myself for only 4 years. Bruce has been at this, it sounds like, for decades, even though he looks much younger than that. And so we hope that we won't be at this issue for decades more, but just don't lose patience, because it takes time. But the difference that you can make with your 5 minutes, 10 minutes is huge. So thank you so much for your time.
I also want to thank you for allowing me to come today and talk with you about my favorite hero, Ashley Sheridan Brown, and the things that we've done to progress with motor coach safety.
We are the parents of Beaumont Westbrook High School girls soccer team. On March 29, 2006, the bus carrying our 23 daughters and their 2 coaches to a playoff game in Houston, Texas, overturned.
Two of our kids, Alicia and Ashley, were killed. The others were maimed and injured.
The motor coach they rode in had no seat belts. Neither do most school buses in Texas.
That is why it is so important for you to watch the next few minutes of video.
Because we don't want what happened to our kids to happen to yours.
However emotionally difficult it is for me to be speaking to you today, I'm here to be a voice, the voice of my daughter, because she can't be. I'd like for all of you to meet the next big thing. Ashley Sheridan Brown is my daughter, my friend, my princess, the middle child between two brothers who adore her. She's a leader academically, spiritually, and athletically, and someone who had dreams of going to college and making her own contribution to society. She often spoke of herself as being the next big thing, and she is, and she always will be for me. When Ashley brought home her first grade spelling test, I couldn't believe she had misspelled every word. However, she had drawn happy faces in the loops of all the letters. I knew then that she was a precious gift from God who always made the best of everything. In 2005, she was 15 years old when we had to evacuate for Hurricane Rita, and I asked the kids to throw a few things together and get in the car. Ashley put every stitch of clothing she owned in that bag. She was not sure where we were going or what we were going to be doing, but she was going to be ready and looking good when we got there. Her smile was contagious, infectious. It brightened every day of my life and every room she entered. She approached each challenge with a smile and her bring-it-on attitude. As a mom, I would like to take credit for the way she was, but in my heart, I know it's just the way God made her. All too soon, I realized she had grown into a beautiful, kind, intelligent, confident young woman. She loved karaoke, snow skiing, driving her blue Jeep Wrangler, laughing so hard with her friends that they couldn't breathe, and soccer. I wouldn't let her go to the beach with her friends during the week of spring break that year, not because of the girls, but because of the other drivers that would be on the road at that time. But I never thought twice about letting her get on that bus a few days later, March 29th, to go to a school-sponsored district soccer game. The motor coach that carried our daughters that day did not have seat belts of any kind. The oversized windows were not impact resistant. They had no glazing and were merely glued to the outside of the bus as opposed to being installed in the framework. When, according to the DPS report, as the bus rolled over on its left side and 25 passengers were thrown from their seats, the windows shattered into shards of glass. Bodies, equipment, books, purses, even seats flew through the air, landing on each other in a mass of asphalt and glass. As the bus slid toward the ditch, our girls were pummeled as if they were in a washing machine. Ashley and Alicia were ejected and crushed. Devin and Allison were ejected, their left arms sucked under the frame of the bus and their bodies dragged beneath it as it skidded, mangling each of their left arms and causing serious head injuries. Still alive, both girls were pinned underneath the bus. Devin was trapped in a bed of fire ants. Allison was pinned upside down in a headstand. It took rescuers over an hour to free them. Sarah's ear was ripped from her head violently gashed, shoulders, ribs, and knees cracked. Glass shards the size of fists lodged in their backs and legs. The beautiful faces of youth shredded on the pavement. In the immediate aftermath, some girls attempted to revive their dead teammates. Others tried to free their trapped friends and comfort them in pain. Blood and tears mixed with mud and raindrops. sheer horror embedded in their memory. In the weeks following, we buried our precious Ashley and Alicia. Of the 21 survivors, all received medical treatment of some kind. The more seriously injured spent a combined total of 86 days in the hospital, including intensive care. 4 of the girls have endured a combined 16 surgeries to save, in some way rebuild their bodies maimed by the accident. Over 8 months of school instructional days were missed prior to the close of the school year. Literally millions of dollars in medical expenses have been expended, and those costs still continue even today. Devon's arm was amputated. For Allison, her left elbow was crushed and is useless. She has minimal use of her left hand. There were multiple head injuries, some requiring plastic surgery and stitches. For some, the road rash, pieces of glass and asphalt embedded in flesh, was so severe that it had to be removed surgically. There have been hours of physical therapy, thousands of stitches, bandages, crutches, and wheelchairs, and there's been pain, lots of pain, both physical and emotional. The girls, their families, and coaches have spent hours in counseling and therapy sessions. As one can expect, both the physical and emotional scars of the tragedy will last a lifetime. This was a small bus carrying 25 passengers. Most buses carry twice that amount. Don't try and tell us that seat belts are not worth the price. After the crash, we learned that charter buses hired by schools, often under pressure from parents, coaches, and teachers, don't meet the crash worthiness standards required by Congress for school buses. Those standards, which became law in 1977, added structural frame, roof, and seat requirements to protect our most precious cargo, the children of our future. The structural requirements forced school bus windows to be small and rigidly framed, offering less chance of ejection. Seat belts in school buses was debated, but because of money and technology issues, never implemented. It was never contemplated that charters would transport school children like they do today. Unfortunately, times have changed, but the law hasn't, nor has the bus industry voluntarily. And still, almost 10 years later, powerful industry lobbies have successfully kept these protections from being added to motor coaches. At the same time, the industry continues to target school districts, churches, and other youth organizations. At the 2007 Motorcoach Expo, one seminar was entitled, Targeting School Districts, How to Increase Your Market Share. Sadly, structural protection, safer windows, lap shoulder seat belts are readily available for motor coaches, but bus manufacturers and operators in the U.S. don't install them to save money. Buses in Europe and Australia have had these protections installed for 15 years. These buses, the chartered motor coaches, are designed for comfort, not safety. Charter buses look massive and have an appearance of safety, but we can't be fooled. Motor coach operators do not inform schools or parents that their buses lack crash protection, yet they still sell their buses for long-distance highway speed travel. Now, 75 miles an hour in Texas highways, the maximum accident risk. And forget about recourse. Even though charters carry 55 to 60 persons at a time, operators are only required to carry insurance limits of $5 million. Nowhere near adequate liability should a crash occur. The bus industry attempts to justify their conduct with a thankfully good accident per miles driven safety record. What they won't share is the high injury, death per accident result. It doesn't matter how experienced your drivers may be or how much training they've been given. Many times, it's not the bus drivers, it's the drivers in the other vehicle who are at fault. No one, Not even the best trained or the most experienced can predict or prevent what another driver will do. This is the best we can do without seat belts. Motorcoach accidents can and will continue to happen, especially given our ever more dangerous and complex highways. And when they do, all passengers must be protected and safely buckled in. If not, the result is catastrophic. The remedy is no more testing, no more studies, no more adults or children should die or be injured as a result of the motorcoach's failure to implement basic safety standards. Over and over again, we see what happens in a motorcoach crash when the passengers are not restrained in a seatbelt. The Motorcoach Enhanced Safety Act, the MESA bill, provides the driving force to require NHTSA to mandate needed safety reforms. The provisions of the bill are strong and they're reasonable. The bill says enough is enough. It's obvious that neither industry nor the Department of Transportation will take action without congressional mandate. Congress must act before more are killed and injured. No more parents, students, or passengers of any age should face the risk that became our horrible reality. The risk is real, the result is real, and the remedy is available and reasonable. It's time for Congress to take the political courage to make a new reality, a reality of safe motor coaches for all. Parents put their children on buses every day and trust they will safely return home. We not only trust, but we expect our children to be safe while participating in school activities. I'm proud to say that my state of Texas has passed and is now enforcing Ashley and Alicia's law to protect children during travel. We can no longer be content to just express our concern, but do nothing. As parents, as members of the Amalgamated Transit Union, as legislators, we must take on the responsibility of doing all that we can to safeguard our children. If only one life is saved, it's worth it, especially if it's the life of your child. While traveling in our personal vehicles, we buckle up, but we don't have that opportunity on most buses. I hope that very soon we can be proud to say that our nation is doing all that we can to protect our loved ones during travel. Ashley and Alicia have always been an inspiration to all those around them. Now more than ever, our angels encourage us and bring us strength. Our team of parents have adopted the bring it on attitude, so if there's something we can do to ensure safety so that no other mother has to go through what I've been through, so that no other sibling, friend, or family member has to endure this nightmare, please tell us. Just bring it on, because we want to rise to the challenge. Our loved ones are too precious not to take the steps necessary to keep them safe and protected. I'd like to leave you today with an excerpt from a poem written by my favorite poet and my hero. My name is Ashley. I'm the next big thing. My lifestyle's silly, but isn't everything? Make me laugh, you probably could. They call me easily amused. And if you could, I bet you would. My name is Ashley.